No matter who you are, I think we can all agree 2020 has been a rough year. So what better way to relax than with an anime about a corporate-driven post-apocalypse? That's basically Deca-Dence in a nutshell so far, and it's made for a pretty engaging show. It's an original anime from the director of Mob Psycho 100 and Death Parade, Yuzuru Tachikawa, so my expectations were already pretty high. And while superficial comparisons to something like Attack on Titan are inevitable, with the last bastion of humanity fighting hordes of monsters using an unconventional propulsion system and weapons, that's honestly where the similarities stop, especially when you look more at what they're ultimately saying and how. Attack on Titan is all about how oppression fuels a perpetual cycle of hatred, and showing just how difficult breaking a cycle like that is, if it's even possible at all. Deca-Dence, on the other hand, at least so far, has cautioned against things like extreme corporatization and commodification. Humanity has no idea, but their post-apocalyptic world is literally a full dive game for cyborgs that has been designed by a company who bought the rights to humankind generations ago as conditions on Earth continue to deteriorate. It's a crazy existence, and they're just along for the ride. Literally. Being touted by the corporation SolidQuake as an endangered species the players of this Avatar-esque game can meet. The company does not care what happens to them and are more than willing to dispatch humans they see as bugs or a threat to their system. There's also dialogue specifically talking about the cyborgs belonging to this company and one's purpose only being to contribute to that system. Deca-Dence isn't trying to be subtle about its messaging, but I don't mind that. There's an innate charm to wearing your heart on your sleeve. And maybe it's the 2020 cynicism, but watching how the world of this show suffered and fell apart, yet there was still somebody around ready to sell something and capitalize on that suffering, just resonates in a way I don't think anyone could have predicted it would. What's more is the series also makes a clear statement about what it thinks is necessary for change to happen. Often when talking about ideology, the debate comes down to working within a system to change it, or toppling said system from the outside, the idea being that the system itself is too massive or corrupt for that change to happen internally. But so far, Deca-Dence seems to be splitting the difference between these two lines of thinking, at least to an extent. Kaburagi represents working from inside the system in a very literal sense. Being a cyborg, he is inextricably linked to the company. He knows the true nature of the world, but being so tied to it, he feels powerless to change or even oppose it. That is, until he meets Natsume, someone who, while unknowingly ignorant of the way her world works, is outside the system because the powers that be believe her to be dead. So she's essentially invisible to their eyes, and ordinarily it would be up to somebody like Kaburagi to remove her. But for him to do that would mean he thinks she has no worth, which just isn't true. And it's both of these realizations that ultimately reignite his sense of purpose, and he begins training her. This is a combo of understanding the circumstances of your situation to the point where you know what needs to be done to change it. Working outside the system from a point of ignorance isn't effective, but neither is working within one that fundamentally stymies attempts at change. Again, this also feels a bit pertinent given the current political climate, at least if you live in the US. Now, I understand if you don't see it this way. How Natsume or Kaburagi are supposed to change things hasn't been explicitly said, so I am forecasting a bit with this interpretation. I am also not saying that Deca-Dence is explicitly a commentary on American politics or capitalism, but it'd be ignorant to say that this series isn't exploring ideas about systems of power and the logical extremes of that power going unchecked. It's also sci-fi, a genre that has always been steeped in exploring the most severe outcomes of specific ideologies and societal trends. But hey, it's also an original anime, so nobody outside the staff for the time being really knows what the ultimate message is going to be. It's only 12 episodes, so at the time of writing this, we've still got 2/3 of the way to go. And much like 2020, nobody knows what'll happen next, but I'm going to hope things don't go too far off the rails and ultimately it lands on its feet. Because that's really the best we can hope for. But as far as my thoughts on the series in general go, I think all of the character designs are on point, Natsume's especially. Something about her hair in particular is just the right mix of quirky and adorable that works perfectly with her personality. Likewise, the distinct difference in art style between the humans and cyborgs is great, and then how those two worlds kind of come together in the section of Deca-Dence that the cyborgs inhabit in their human bodies is really cool. I don't dig the monster designs as much, and it's not even the CG, I think that's fairly well integrated, but they just don't come across as that memorable to me. I suppose they likely have been engineered as typical monster hordes for the game, so maybe the designs were meant to be more generic and will get less so as they fight more difficult Gadolls like we saw in episode 4, but I guess we'll see. The combat against them, however, feels fluid and purposeful, with a real sense of impact when it matters. It's great. I also appreciate that they don't whip out the Deca-Dence giant fist trump card in every fight. I'm sure we'll see it again, and my expectation originally was that it would be more common, and while I don't think that would have been a bad thing inherently, I respect the restraint. Instead, it succeeded as a solid wow moment to hook you at the end of the first episode in case you weren't already sold. But that's just what I think, and as always, I'd love to hear what you have to say. Are you watching Deca-Dence? This season is light on shows, but a lot of what is running are sequels, so I feel like it might be getting buried a bit being an original anime, and therefore not having an existing fanbase from either the first season or a manga. Is there anything you really enjoy or dislike about it? Any thoughts you may have can be left down below. Thank you so much for watching though, and as always, an especially big thanks goes out to my awesome patrons, OverjoyedSoup, MVPino, Beorn, Token, and everyone else whose support helps make videos like these possible. Links to that Patreon if you'd like to join them, my shirts, and everything else are either down below or on the screen right now. Be sure to hit that like button and click that bell for notifications so you know whenever a new video goes up. You can also follow me on Twitter or Twitch. Thanks again for watching, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time.